Well, hi, this is Jim Peacock, and with another Peak Careers interview. Today, we're going to talk about a tech-free retreat, or really sort of retreats in general. How do you sort of turn off the noise? How do you get away from all the, what I call the tsunami of information? Today, I've got Mark Peacock, who's been doing day-long retreats for 30 years, and really, he inspired me to do them. I began doing them a couple years ago, and Rachel Horton White is a life coach and mindfulness teacher who I met at an event a few years ago. Then we've stayed connected on, we're friends on Facebook or something. And I saw her talking about retreats. So I invited Rachel to join us today. So what we're going to do today and explore a little bit today is, what's a typical retreat look like for Rachel, and what it looked like for Mark? What motivated them to start doing it, and what are for me, the real part of this is what are the benefits of doing them? So Mark has devoted his entire professional career to the Catholic Church. He was a youth minister for many years, director of religious ed. He's a little different. He is now a priest, and he was married, and he has 2 grown children. He is the one who inspired me to do these monthly retreats. I didn't even know he was doing them for many years, and then we talked about it. And then I started doing them a couple years ago. Rachel has her own business, Soulful Work Intuitive Consulting, and she helps people really open up those and release those negative patterns that they have in their lives. But she's really focused on mindfulness and intuition, from what I can tell. And we are going to talk about how do these retreats work for people. So we're going to start with Rachel. And so what does a retreat look like for you, and maybe what kind of got you motivated to start doing those?
Well, the retreats for me look different depending on where I am and what my family's doing at the time. I have 2 young children. So sometimes in the summer, my parents have an island house on an island, summer place on the island. And that, as soon as you say the word retreat, that's usually what comes to my mind, because that's where I think of, and I go and I sit and I find places in nature just to sit by myself, sometimes for a few hours, sometimes go for walks. So that's one thing. Sometimes I will locally I like to be outside, so I often am just finding a place to be outside. And but in the winter, as it's getting to be now more, sometimes I'll just go to a place to get some tea and do some writing. But it almost always involves some kind of meditation, which is, just quieting my mind, getting into the breath. And then I usually end up doing some kind of connection with what I call higher guidance. I use the word God pretty freely. I also connect with, spirit guides, angels, but just that divine essence within and around us. So, and so the reason I first started doing them was really because I was working in the nonprofit sector for years and social services. And after I had my second child, my daughter, I have a 7-year-old and I have a 3.5-year-old. When I had my daughter, I was just so totally exhausted, and I would come home from work and cry. I was grinding my teeth at night because I was so stressed, and I had no energy left for my family, for my children, and that was just not okay. I didn't want to live like that anymore. So, and I'd always been spiritual. I liked meditation. I was always interested in spirituality, but I never really, did a lot with that. But our babysitter said, you should hire a life coach. And I was like, well, what's that? And so I did. And she said, well, my daughter had a life coach and she changed her life. So I said, all right, that sounds good. So I hired this woman, and she told me to do 2 things. And that is meditate and start talking to something higher than yourself. So I did. And that's why I'm doing this here and talking to you today, because that really just helped clear my mind of all the clutter, all the information, social media. I stopped listening to the news as much. I stopped reading the news. I check the headlines every so often, but I had to just clear. And then I started having what I call awakening, and just seeing reality in a very different way. So anyway, that's And so I continue to try to find, and I honestly want to do better at it, find chunks of time to get quiet. That's kind of how I view it, to get quiet, to get away. I need that solitude, because my life is very busy with kids and, so even if it's just small chunks of time, like you alluded to me, that's ideal. But I am taking a 2-3 day retreat in Massachusetts next year to just go by myself, because I crave that getting away time, and I need that to kind of reset. So every so often. So it's really, really important.
So how often would you actually do like a long period of time, a half a day or a day? How often do you get a chance to do something like that?
I would like to say that I have these regular, it's, a regular thing scheduled, but I really kind of do it as needed. So I would say every few months is when although I like what you're doing about taking a day to unplug, and I'm trying to do that more. And I do that for periods of time, for a couple hours, but a whole day is honestly a wonderful goal.
It's hard. It's hard to do. It is hard to do, but I know I do mini ones. I try to. A matter of fact, on my calendar at 2:30 every day, it says mindfulness, and I'm fortunate. I work at home alone, and I usually try to take half an hour and just quiet down.
Yeah, and for me, that time is the morning. I wake up and I do some yoga, and I do some quieting my mind in the morning, and that kind of sets the tone for my day. And I try to do it in most evenings as well. They don't always every single evening, but
all right, let's talk to Mark, my favorite brother. Don't tell all the other ones, but
That's right.
That's right. So talk to us about your retreat, what made you, what does it look like, and then how did you just start to do it? I didn't realize you did it for so long.
Yeah, actually, they started back in when I was in college, back in the late 70s. When I was first thinking about contemplating priesthood back then, and what I would do then, I would take the whole weekend. I would go to a place normally, and they're always the same. I mean, they're either a seminary, a retreat house, or a cabin way back in the woods where I'm not disturbed whatsoever. But they always sort of take that same format, because what my whole intent is truly to be unplugged, as you've said in your article today, Jim, and you've said it quite often, is put the cell phone away and really just spend some time in quiet, in prayer, in reflection. So for me, one of the places I look for is the place needs to have a desk where I can do some writing. It needs to have a comfortable chair, hopefully a place to take a nap, because that's always part of my experience also. And I always bring my own food. I always bring my tea with me. If they have a chapel that's close, the better, but I can stay right in this room wherever I go and stay there and for the day. Like I said in the beginning, they were whole weekend experiences back when I was in college. Through my married life, they tended to metamorph into a day-long retreat. Coincidentally, I mean, Rachel touched on it. I mean, for me, it just fell into, if you look for the months that have a fifth Friday, they tend to be quarterly, and I always look for those days. So on my calendar, I look ahead for what months have a fifth Friday. So I check that off. November 30th is the next time I'm going to do one of my days. And this time I'm going to a friend's cabin that's all alone on a lake. It's back in the woods. I won't be disturbed. It's a private gate. It's gated. It's got a keeper that opens the gate for me and closes it behind me, so I know I'll be all alone. But again, it's time away. It's time to not check the cell phone. I bring extra reading. I always build into it a nap. I mean, and that's part of the slowing down, right? It's part of the sort of just letting go of everything. As Rachel said, and as you know, Jim, I mean, we live super busy lives. All of us are busy people. We're racing from here. We're running to meetings. We're meeting commitments. We're doing all these things. But on these days, my goal is to set that all aside. I need extended period of time. And that's what I realized about myself. I need extended period of times where I can just focus to make sure I'm on the right way where God wants me to be, where I'm heading in a way that I know God wants me to be. And to do that in a way that is proper and good for me, I like to do that every quarter. Like I said, every fifth Friday, whenever there's a fifth Friday of the month. And if you look again, they're quarterly.
So look, and that fifth Friday it eliminates all those standing meetings. We're going to meet Fridays at 2, and that's just an extra Friday that's sitting out there. That's
right.
It's really kind of unbanked. Nobody's going to touch that one, right?
Right. Yeah. My spiritual director told me that 20 years ago, and I was like, he's right. You can schedule meetings on the first Friday, the second Friday, you have standing meetings, right? Nobody schedules a standing meeting on a fifth Friday.
Except you.
Except me. But it's just one of those open days, and it just seems to work for me. And again, it's really about sitting and contemplating in absolute quiet for me. Absolute quiet. That's how I function best.
These days people are not doing a lot of deep thinking, because everything is in sound bites. Everything's in an email or a text or whatever. And even a friend of mine who's a faculty member here at Colby College was saying even the students he's seeing now, they can't sustain that long, deep thinking like people did in the past. And I think part of that is a reflection of this, this world that we live in, where even all the video games are designed so that you're just moving all the time. And the other thing, I just read a book by Daniel Pink it's called When, and he really looks at timing and lots of stuff. It's very interesting. But one of the things he says is, he goes, your energies, for most people, their energy is best in the morning. In the afternoon, somewhere around 2:30 or so, there tends to be a crash. He goes, people should take a nap.
That's what they do in Latin America, siestas.
Exactly.
But interesting, he said, because this is all a book about timing and when. He says 25-minute nap is the best. He goes, anything less, you're not going to be rested enough. Anything more, you're actually going to be too tired. And it's amazing. I set my alarm for 25 minutes. And it is amazing how refreshed I am. And I just...
So fun. I do that too. I do that in the evening. Sometimes I go see clients and I will just wake up after 20 minutes. It's just like this 20, it's me. That's so funny. I set the timer too. It's so funny.
So why don't we just merge into the benefits? We've kind of talked a little bit about them, but Mark, what do you think are some of the benefits of this?
Well, for me, it's clarity of mind and heart and soul. It's just being, I look forward to the day, and then when I get there, I'm thinking, oh, I've got 6-7 hours, and I always think, wow, it just seems so long. Every time at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I need more time. I wish I had more time. Where did the day go? So for me, I always feel more clarity. I'm more self-directed. Definitely more at peace. When I leave whatever place that I'm at, I always feel as though the world is all of a sudden a whole new space. I always see it more clearly for where God has intended it to be for us, His creation. I always see it differently when I leave. So for me, definitely more at peace. The other benefit, obviously, for me doing it on Friday is, the weekend is full of celebrating masses and greeting people, and it just makes me a lot more at peace and ready to do what I'm supposed to do. So, yeah.
Rachel, what do you think that what do you see as benefits of this?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Mark said, I think my language might be a little different, but I think about the way my mind works and the way, my spirit works is I like to say there's my higher self and then there's my ego self. And, my ego self is filled with all the fears and the worries and the doubts, and you should be this and you shouldn't be that, and you can't and you shouldn't, all those things. And I find that when I take that time, it's like pushing the pause button on the, all the noise and it's really like emotion, it's information overload. Then, my higher self can emerge and start to speak to me, which is kind of like what Mark was alluding to, that divine part of who I am, God, it's all, I think it's all connected. And I can start to really, and I use my own feelings to kind of guide me intuitively, like what feels right. And sometimes though I doubt those feelings and I question them. Oh, is this really right? And that's my ego coming in and try to manipulate things a little bit. But when there's that clarity in that space, it's almost like that's when it's like that feeling of trust and being able to trust myself to be guided, and also to use my own volition, I guess, to kind of make choices that feel right, aligned with my soul and aligned with what my divine guidance, wants from me, kind of, like Mark was saying. So it's just clearing out the clutter, really.
Yeah, and even though you're both talking sort of spiritual and this, but for me, I mean, I agree with all that, but for me, it's this cleansing. It's this feeling, it's just this great feeling where I honor myself for one day, where I may not. At home, and I have to leave the house, because here I look around and go, oh, I got to go through that pile of stuff over there, or I got to go do something down the hall. It takes me to a new place, and I just feel like it just opens up the rest of my brain. I mean, it's an amazing feeling when I go on these retreats when I'm done,
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's I love John Kabat-Zinn. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a mindfulness meditation teacher, and he talks about mindfulness in everyday moments. And what he's done so brilliantly is bring it the concept of mindfulness into everyday living. So it's like, these retreats are really important, but even taking a minute just to breathe, or taking 5 minutes, if you feel like you don't have a full day, yes, it's ideal to get longer chunks of time when you can, but there's been some there's studies that show that even those small little chunks can actually really help. So
yeah, I mean, and that kind of merges to my final question about advice. What kind of advice? A lot of people can't do a full day, and it sort of merges into my 2:30 appointment every day. It says mindfulness, and there's days I don't do it, but I mean, like, to your point, a daily reminder, a daily sort of cleansing is pretty powerful. And I'll tell you what, I really like it. I'm actually not, I'm missing it right now because it's 2:30 we're recording this, but I mean, it really is, that's so important. So it doesn't have to be a day-long retreat. It doesn't have to be a half a day, but there are things to do. What other advice would you folks have?
Well, for myself, I do think I agree with both of you. I think it's great daily experience. For me, I get up at 4:30 every day, and when it's dark, when it's quiet, when I can light just a candle and I can just sit and meditate upon the darkness and the light of that candle breaking the darkness. So for me, it's that hour that I spend in quiet as soon as I get up in the morning. And it's all those benefits, right? I love what Rachel says. We all have those intimate fears of our life, that we don't measure up, that we're a failure, that we're worried, we're concerned about things. We have to fight those fears. And to me, it's doing that through these moments of retreat and connecting with God in these intimate ways, because he's always there available to us. So for me, it happens daily on an hour basis, getting up early, and then looking forward to these day long. I think we could set that goal, four times a year is doable for just about anybody. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about advice, I mean, all of that is wonderful. And I think, Mark, you're lucky you have a life where you can spend a lot, it's a wonderful gift that you have this, and I'm thinking, well, I have 2 kids and I work, blah, 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 right? And that's sort of some of the people are thinking that, but that doesn't need to be an excuse. I think for me, it's just getting a little more creative. And honestly, it's also about habits. And so what I decided, a year ago, I said, really, if I don't start my day, it's similar to what Mark was saying, but slightly different for me. I don't wake up as early as that. But if I do not start my day doing some movement in my body, yoga, and some quieting my mind, and I also do, mindfulness, and I also do my own, feel light in my body, and I connect with light. And sometimes, I'm actually praying. It really is a form of prayer. I don't use that term all the time, but if I don't do that in the morning, then I get a little messed up. The rest of my day, I might get a little irritable, so it's really, and at first I had to kind of just say, all right, all I got to do now is just get out of the bed, like take the covers off, and then just physically get my body out of the bed. And I already had, this plan, like, okay, I'm going to go in this corner of my room, and I have this little place I sit, I stretch, and I sit. But at first, and I said, I'm just going to do that every day. I said, no, I'm just going to try it today and see what happens. I'm just going to say, just for today, I'm just going to do this thing. And then it felt so good after that. I was like, maybe I'll do that again tomorrow. And so I think that's the biggest barrier for a lot of people, is just thinking it becomes this overwhelming thing, like another, thing of I should be doing. And I work with people a lot on this. And I think I've found that for me that, it takes, what do they say, 20 days, 21 days to create a new habit, that if you just start just for one day, see what happens. And maybe even it's just 3 or 5 minutes of just quieting the mind. But, then you'll find, I find this, I'm like, oh, I've actually been sitting here for 20 minutes because I didn't feel like getting up. This felt so good. So, but I think the key is, starting small and starting with these achievable things, and also making it be like meditation isn't like meditation, I sometimes call it just quieting the mind or stillness. So it's not this loaded thing, and it can feel more like a reward than a chore.
Yeah. So, and I would, just to wrap this up, because I really try to keep these to about 15, 20 minutes, and we're at about the 20-minute mark. Two things that really jump out at me is, one is routine. I mean, when you can make these things a routine, it's like my appointment at 2:30. It pops up every day. Again, it doesn't happen every day, but it happens most days. And it's that I look forward to it, and it is a time just to sort of, okay, I got all this stuff to do. I got all this stuff. It's 2:30. I'm going to take 25 minutes, The other thing is, for me, one other tip I would really give to people is turn off the bloody notifications on your email.
Oh, yeah.
All these things are popping in. It's just another piece of information that just is tough on people.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm going to, again, in the interest of trying to keep this to the 20-minute time frame, I want to talk about how grateful I am to have both of you guys here today. But I am Jim Peacock with Peak Careers Consulting. I've been offering the Facilitating Career class since 2001. I have online discussion-based seminars for career practitioners. I do workshops, and I have a handful of individual career coaching clients. I don't have a lot, but I usually have 3 or 4 at a time. If you are a career practitioner, someone who delivers career services, feel free to sign up for my top 10 tips for working with an undecided person on my website. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Facebook a little bit, and Twitter. but you can find me on all these social media sites, and would love to connect. Anyways, I'd like to say thank you very much to Mark and to Rachel's for taking some time today to share their thoughts on the retreat. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. It was fun.